Hi everyone. I wanted to take a moment today and share with you a little bit about what we are thinking we are stepping into next for creating the future. And I need to share with you that I'm really excited about this. We think that this is really important for several reasons. One is, yes, the work that we will be doing, but more importantly is the impact that we think this can have very quickly throughout the social change arena. And so what I want to do in this video is to share a little bit about what we're thinking, why we think that is important, and a little bit about what we're thinking will actually happen. What I'm going to share with you is the result of perhaps 100 different conversations that we have had over the past year or so. Those are conversations with anyone who is even remotely connected to this social change ecosystem, from people working within foundations to individual activists, from CEOs to line workers, from people in academia to consultants, and anyone in between. And we've had this many conversations because catalytic thinking guides us to that being the first question. Who will be affected by any decision that we're about to make? And what will it take to include them in that decision? And so what I'm going to pull together for you here is really the result of all of those conversations with all of those really smart people. And what became clear over and over and over again in all of those conversations is that the systems that we use internally within social change organizations, from NGOs and nonprofits to social enterprises to everything in between, all of those internal systems, accounting, human resources, those invisible systems, fundraising and boards and communications, none of those systems was designed for the systemic societal change we want to see. They all came from other places and were adapted by us. We got strategic planning from the military, who then handed it to the business world, who then handed it to us. We emulated church charity, which is helping one person or one group at a time. And goodness knows we are really good at helping one person and one group at a time. And so much of what we adapted from the business world. And what became very clear is that these are all places of power and privilege. And so we are trying to, in the words of Audre Lorde, we are trying to dismantle the master's house using the tools of the master's house. We are trying to dismantle power and privilege in communities using tools of power and privilege. And we wonder why things feel schizophrenic, as a friend of mine just recently told me, that everything he does feels schizophrenic. Like he knows he should be doing this over here, but the systems lead him to do this over here. And so what we are intending to do is to design new systems that are intended for the work that we are doing in this social change ecosystem. Let me share with you a little bit about what that program will look like. What we're going to be doing is building on what we are already doing. And what we're already doing is experimenting, applying catalytic thinking in a variety of different circumstances, and then sharing what we learn in those experiments. And that mission of experimenting and sharing what we learn, that is our mission. And so this way of being, we're actually going to formalize that into a program, moving from a way of being to a formal program that folks can participate in. And so anyone who is interested in one or two aspects that they might want to change in their own organization can actively participate in those experiments and get support for their learning all along the way. Here's some of what we think that might include. Obviously, first, they will be part of the experiment. We'll all be working together, all learning together. Participants won't be sitting on the sidelines watching. They'll be actively applying catalytic thinking to the issue at hand, all of us working through it together. There'll be a facilitated learning community where folks can support each other as they begin bringing these approaches and questions back to their own organizations. Things like, here's what's happened when I asked this question to my board. Did anyone else try this? How did it go? That peer support is so important as folks put a toe into new ways of being. They'll also get classes on catalytic thinking to provide background if they need it. There'll be regular live Q&A sessions in real time so folks can explore together. One-on-one coaching if they need it as they bring experimenting into their own organizations. And importantly, we will document the whole process and share what we learn as well as the results. We think this is really important to provide legitimacy for folks who feel they have to make a case to their board or to others as they start to bring what they're learning back into their organization. we're seeing that there may be two ways that folks can participate. The first is going to be to dive right in, to experiment alongside us on whichever issue it is that they're excited about. The other, though, is for folks who either don't have the time or don't feel that they're ready to dive in like that, and they'll be able to subscribe and get updates and reports and watch from the outside so that they can start absorbing and maybe sharing a little bit of what they're learning with their boards and their organizations. We're seeing this as another source of collective enoughness where we're all supporting each other. We will all contribute and we will all benefit. What we'll be asking is for folks who are involved in these experiments to contribute, just as we always have, under that meme of no more than you can afford and no less than you think it's worth. We have always said we don't want money to ever stand in the way of people learning, and we feel that this is a way that everyone can contribute and everyone can benefit. It's the way movements work. It is the way mutual aid and mutual support works. And that's what we want to emulate. And again, that's another experiment that we'll have. We're seeing the power of this being twofold. One, people will have the ability to learn, to support each other, and to gain the confidence by actually experiencing catalytic thinking in action so that they can bring it back into their own organization. But the other big piece of this is that they will have a safe space to explore and experiment at no risk at all. And here's what I mean by no risk. When you're experimenting on your own organization, it's scary. How do I know my board is going to like this? Or what about the people who say that's not the way you do this? And this is going to be sort of like a flight simulator where you don't have to learn by flying the actual plane. You can learn on the console, and that's what we're going to be doing. Is folks will have the opportunity to learn and explore. We'll be the guinea pig, and they can step into it in their own organizations at a pace that feels right for them. So let's talk a little bit about what those experiments might be. Obviously, there is the ongoing experiment that is our board's work. We're also stepping into developing a new program using catalytic thinking for program design, and that will be decentralizing our education programs. Because if people have to keep coming to Creating the Future to learn, that limits the number of people who can learn. We can develop the content, but we don't have to deliver the content. And so what would a program look like as you're designing a program using catalytic thinking? As we're going through all of these changes, we're going to need to update our communication strategy. And again, applying catalytic thinking to communication strategy. That spirit of collective enoughness, that is a whole nother experiment. What does it look like when you're sharing things like an IT position or a bookkeeping position or an administrative position? What does it look like to share those functions, and what are the systems that we need to put in place for that? Another experiment for folks who are looking for different ways of resourcing. The first experiment, though, is going to be with hiring and compensation and job descriptions. What does a job description look like that is rooted in equity, that is rooted in catalytic thinking? We know that this work is needed and important. It is needed because there really is no place for folks to experiment in a safe environment where they can then bring that spirit of experimenting back into their own work. Because we all have that feeling of schizophrenia. We're all struggling. We all feel that frustration when the systems that we need to use go counter to what we're trying to accomplish. Our hope is that folks will slowly gain the confidence to experiment in their own organizations, to find another path to creating the systemic change that we want to see. Perhaps in a phase 2 of this will ripple out enough that we are talking about the entire world. But for right now, we know that we have an opportunity to start designing new systems that actually align with the world that we want to see. We know that this systems change work is not impossible, because as we know at Creating the Future, unless something is physically impossible, it is possible. We humans designed these systems. We can design new systems, and we hope that you'll be part of that.